There we go.
Oh, it's very snug, isn't it?
It's very snug. Hello. Okay, now we have our final cast member, Rich.
Yay.
Hello.
Welcome back. It's me, Rich, LJ, and Scott.
Hello.
So we talked in the previous vlog about the advantages, disadvantages of touring, what to expect, what you might not get told in an audition, what to expect going into schools, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the rehearsal process and performing in multiple plays at once. So, what do you enjoy about doing more than one play, and what do you find challenging?
Oof, good question. I suppose one of the tricky things about doing more than one play at the same time is keeping the script straight in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Especially where, for example, at the moment we're doing Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth, so two Shakespeare plays.
Quite different.
Yeah, quite different, but also at the same time, it's possible that the language will get muddled in your head.
Yes.
So keeping those two scripts straight in your own mind for yourself can be a challenge, but also just keep refreshing them.
Yep. Keeping accents separate.
My
nerves will slip into other parts sometimes.
Yeah, having really specific accents for certain parts is quite helpful, especially when you're playing, say, 4 or 5 in each play. That's really useful to have a set accent for each one. And don't, I would say, don't kind of get lax. Even if you're just reading the play that you're doing the next day, the night before, every night before, I think that's really helpful.
I think there's something to be said about just being kind to yourself as well, because when you take on a lot, you can easily get very wound up and very stressed, thinking about everything that you've got to do. I know when, in our rehearsal period, there were times where we were like, okay, well, we have to stop now today.
Yeah.
There's no more you can do because nothing else is going in.
Yeah.
So you just have to trust that your brain is going to do its thing and things are going to start to soak in, because actually you just give yourself a break, just give yourself that time to let the information that it's taking in just sink in.
Yeah, because actually having a break, I think, did make our lines sink in.
Yeah.
For Macbeth, which was the second play that we rehearsed, I think when we had a little gap, and that actually helped a lot.
I always find that learning my lines the next day, I know them that little bit better.
Yeah,
the recall is. I always find that so fascinating. I'm like, well done, brain. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you enjoy about doing 2 plays at once, performing them or rehearsing them?
You never get bored. They never get stagnant, and you just you always feel a bit on your toes. And we've been finding, haven't we, that newer, nicer things and relationships develop more, and you get a bit more playful because you're never sitting with the same play long enough to really. I always find that the next time we do it, I will have forgotten what I did the last time, so it always feels still in the moment in that same sort of way.
Yeah, it never gets stale.
No.
Sort of like, or you that thing that you find with, especially.
Emotions.
Yes, when you talk to actors that have been in, for example, a long-running show, sort of like sometimes they can say that they just act on autopilot. That they know exactly what to do on this line at this particular beat, move to this particular spot on stage. Whereas with doing multiple plays at the same time, your brain and your body doesn't have time to fall into that repetitive pattern.
I also think that's the positive thing about touring, is because you're always in a different venue. Although you have the idea of how you want to set up, it's never exactly the same every time. So you do have to keep on your toes, and it kind of does keep things quite fresh because you have to adapt to a new space every single time. Absolutely. So I think that's kind of an exciting and enjoyable part of touring and doing a couple of shows. And you get to play loads of different parts, which is really cool. Yes. You don't often get the opportunity to play as many parts as you get to when you're 4 people doing 2 plays.
It's good testament to your craft, isn't it?
Yeah.
To go through your physicality and your voice work and stuff like that. It's nice because it takes me back to those classes at drama school and stuff like that you had to do, because you're like,
you've got to do all
because it's nice and it's fun. It's more playful. I always feel that it's more like being a kid playing a bit more, like, you know, being the nurse and everything, because I'm not old I'm not old and cranky, but you know, you get to pretend like you did when you were a kid and stuff like that.
And getting to play the men's parts is really fun, actually, I think, because you don't always get to do stuff like that in sword fight.
No.
Well, I don't. I'm always playing 14-year-old girls or something.
Getting to stab them in.
Yeah, that's fun. So what do you think is useful in terms of switching your mindset or whatever to a new play? How do you manage to do that? What do you use to do that?
One of the things that I would say is, if you make any mistakes, especially yet again referring to our own experience with what we're doing at the moment, we could be doing Macbeth at 9 o'clock, and then we'll be doing Romeo and Juliet at 11:30. So dwelling on what's just happened isn't going to help your brain. You need to let that play go and then focus on the one that's in front of you. And I think that's just a good way of being with doing performances like this, is you just let it be what it is, and then once it's done, let it go, move on to the next one.
I find music very helpful as well. We have a playlist for Romeo and Juliet, and we have some backing tracks and stuff, and I find just having those on while we had those on today, didn't we, while we were getting that set up, and that was useful for me to get into a new mindset.
I think costume for me.
That's true.
Yeah, purely because
the shoes and stuff.
Well, for me, like, because I start as Tybalt in R&J, like having that jacket on and being out with the kids at the beginning is very, very different. Being out with the kids at the beginning, being able to not have to hide behind like a curtain, and because you can settle into it, and you can, that thing of going out cold into an audience isn't there. And sometimes that can be really hard, especially if you haven't had time to switch your brain. And obviously we're the witches in the beginning, which is nice because we're very neutral, and then we get to move into being the witch. So I find that just focusing on that first character and just being like, who am I here? Where am I? What am I doing right now? And then because it's been rehearsed, everything else just kind of trots along.
I like to think about how they stand. So like I wear dungarees in Romeo and Juliet, and I don't wear anything like that in Macbeth, and I like to put my hands in my pockets, and I like to fiddle with my baseball cap and stuff, because then that gets me into a kind of younger person's body and feel, and I kind of like to stomp around a bit in my boots, and I actually like to smile. I find smiling for Romeo and Juliet was really helpful, because I don't smile very much.
I haven't noticed that. There's no
that's
smiles.
really helpful. But yeah, we also do something after every show, which I really recommend that you do, even if you don't have your director on tour. Rich directed our brilliant R&J. So what we do after every show, which I really recommend doing, is what we call a tasty debrief, because we debrief everything that happened in the show over lunch. But I really recommend doing that. And how do we structure that? Why do you find it helpful?
I think it's a really good way of communicating with each other, just being really sort of open and honest about things that went well, things that didn't go so well, things to think about for the next time, ways to improve, you sit down and you're all talking in one conversation, and then it's once that's done, you can then move on with the rest of the day and crack on. So it's just a really good way, I think, of just, while it's all fresh in your mind, once you've done it, it's all there. You can just talk about it in a slightly more formal setting, but in a relaxed way as well. And there's complete trust.
Doing it over food and coffee and cake or whatever wonderfulness is there, just makes everything a little bit less. There's no fear of it being judgmental. If you're like, okay, I'm really sorry, I missed my cue and I didn't come in, and I know I was off for that entrance. It doesn't have to be oh my god, I'm really sorry, I screwed up. It just has to be, it's just like, look, I'm sorry, I'm aware of it, and everyone's on the same sort of page. Cake does good things for people.
But it also gets to that stage where there's not much to be said as well. You know, once the show's up and it's running and you know it's going through the motions. There's not an awful lot of notes to give or anything like that, but it's more just about how people felt about it or anything like that. But it doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be a big discussion at all. But it's there if you want it, and it's just nice at the end of it just to relax and have a cup of tea
and just chat about how things went, and then you can just leave it after that, can't you, and just get on with your day. Yeah. So those are a few tips for rehearsing and performing 2 plays at a time and touring.
Yes.
So in our next vlog we're going to be talking about revisiting roles that you've already played. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm stuck.
Actually, I need